who are. Hi, my name is Anita Walz, and I'm the Assistant Director for Open Education and Scholarly Communication Librarian at Virginia Tech. This is a role that I've held for the last 10 years. And my talk comes out of my practical work, working both with professors who are not authors and those who are, at the intersection of my role as a ScholarComm librarian, director of an open ed program, and as a liaison librarian. It also comes from a strategic approach of asking, where can we add value? What is feasible given the resources that we have? How can we improve the landscape for learners and instructors to make, as the open education mission statement says, learning resources more accessible, affordable, quality, flexible, and adaptable, and engaging. So over the last 8 years, I have worked with a number of faculty. We have published over 25 different open educational resources in different fields. And we consider rights reversion to be a really important part of our strategy, even though it's a very small number of these titles. So before we go too far into things, I would love a show of hands for those, and this is for those of you online too. So you can put in the chat what your response is, but please raise your hand or put in the chat. I have heard of rights reversion before. Okay, lots of hands in the room. Secondly, I know a lot about rights reversion. Yay. Okay, so a few bold folks here. And then third, and thank you for the yes and no's on chat. And the topic is brand new to me. Show of hands, brand new. Okay, so people have there's some newbies. Thank you for being new at this and willing to learn. This is really helpful. So by the end of this session, I'm hoping that you're able to articulate a summary of what rights reversion is, describe something that makes something an open educational resource. This is something I don't want to assume people already know. Explain some rationale for including rights reversion to OER as part of an open initiative or publishing program, and then describe why rights reversion to OER, if not already obvious, might add value to authors and communities that you serve, and similarities and differences to what you might already do with regard to the things that you support creation of or are looking for in your program. I'm going to try to keep up with the chat. No promises, I'm really going to try. But if you have questions, I would encourage you to put them in the chat so that we can get to those right away. For those of you who are online. So, okay, so we're going to talk about 5 different books in this session. 4 of these are projects that I've coordinated, and 1 is a project out of Rice University. One of these that I've coordinated is not yet released. We're still working on it. And then in this, that's the 4th. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about 3 themes: process, labor, the work, and value of the work, all related to rights reversion. So I'm going to tie this into the work we're already doing with creation and public release of OER. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost benefit analysis for doing this also labor intensive work. It's a bit less labor intensive in some ways and a bit more in others. So before we dive in, rights reversion is an intentional process by which an author or author group obtains all or some of their rights back to an original work. As you may already know, when an author writes a book, typically their commercial publisher requires that they hand over all of their copyrights to that publisher. They don't get to retain any rights. So rights reversion is made necessary when an author or someone else wants to create derivatives, publicly display the material, perform the material outside of a fair use, and cannot because their copyrights have been transferred to the publisher. So the prior agreement may or may not have a rights reversion clause. And if an agreement does not have a rights reversion clause, rights reversion is not automatic, and it's at the discretion of the publisher. So Likewise, for something to become an open educational resource, a free to the public, released under a license that allows no cost adaptation and sharing, a license must be adhered to the material. And this is an action that only the copyright holder can do. Someone else can't come along and put an open license if they don't own the rights to the material. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how what our current workflow is for producing OER and how rights reversion kind of interrupts that. So we have 3 typical stages: onboarding and authoring, review, layout, and proof, and the really fun publish and share and say, hey, look what we made, we're so excited. So rights reversion interrupts the onboarding, the authoring, the review. It does not interrupt the layout and the proof, but it causes just a very different distribution of labor. So what we don't have to do with the rights reversion is work with the author to develop the content, to make sure that it's polished, to make sure that it is of high quality, to make sure it's relevant. We don't have to do peer review. We don't have to do copy editing. We're skipping a lot of steps because the manuscript is already done. And I'll talk a little bit about, oh no, we have a manuscript that's already done, and oh no, it has problems. So there's some of that. But I just want to point out that this provides some efficiencies to a OER publication process, but it also provides some complexity. So what has this looked like in practice in terms of what we do have to do? So I typically require that the author or an estate writes a new introduction. It can be really short. It needs to explain, this is rights reverted. Why is it rights reverted? Why is it republished? Why is it still valuable? Is it different than the previous edition? It includes all sorts of updated metadata, new ISBNs, new DOI if you do that, new cataloging information. It may include some minor corrections if there are typos, and it includes obviously new layout and design in most cases, and a new cover. One of the joys, and that's sarcastic, sorry, of this is if there are third-party materials that are included in the work, you have to get permission for them. So we try to get permission for them to be released under the same license as the book as a service to downstream users. Not everybody does this. Not every person that we ask for permission to use their stuff will allow us to do that. And then we work to make things accessible, addition of structured headings, alternative text, and obviously putting an open license on it when it previously was not openly licensed. So we don't have to do the author coaching and things like this. So sometimes it feels a little bit like cheating. But I'm going to walk you through the examples that I have. So for veterinary epidemiology, this was published by Iowa State University Press, which was acquired by Wiley, and the rights had automatically been reverted. A professor came to me and said, I have a very large veterinary medicine class. I like this book. I can only find 15 copies. Yeah, the library has 6 copies, but I have 95 students. Can you, what can we do? And so our initial approach was to implement a fair use solution. We scanned all of the chapters and then we displayed them one at a time in a closed environment and took them down after that chapter had been used. And this was a US fair use based approach in which the author felt fine with this. It actually went up to legal counsel because I had colleagues who did not feel fine about it. And legal counsel said, yes, of course you can do this. But I thought we can do better, right? We can do better. Let's contact the authors and see if they will allow us to digitize and put an open license on it. This book is one where we scanned it, we OCR'd it, and we did not do the layout. Again, we didn't have any publishing support at that point, so it's a scanned PDF that has OCR. It doesn't have any images in it because there weren't any, which was great. But it also doesn't have any alt text, or it doesn't have any structured headers. And I made a mistake in offering the authors to release it under any of the Creative Commons licenses. So it's under a no derivatives license. I'm so sorry. That was not my hope. I really tried to get them to choose a license that was more open, and they refused. So what I have been doing now is telling people, if you want to do a rights reversion, these are the options. These 4 licenses, I don't even give no derivatives as an option. So that's Vet Epi. It has over at this point 150,000 whole book downloads and a lot of chapter level downloads. So it's definitely used locally, and it's used by other people in other places. Okay, methods of teaching agriculture is a manuscript that I'm currently I'm doing 2 things with this. One is we have pulled in the appendix of this book into a new book. Because the rights were reverted to the authors. So this is one where the author had already obtained the rights back. And then we're also working on digitizing this book because it's a seminal work. It is out of print. It's hard to get access to the content. Some of it is dated, but we're working to get this out hopefully in November as a Methods of Teaching Agriculture. This is a copy of the 2014 book, which still has some value in it. And then I want to tell you about construction contracting. So this one also required scanning and OCRing the book. My colleague and I initially planned to remediate a PDF, but it was so ugly that we decided that we wanted to relay it out. So we scraped the content out of the scanned PDF, rendered it in Pressbooks, went through a complete redesign, replaced graphics and alternative text, and then added an explanation regarding the relationship of this version to the original 2nd edition and a dedication to the author's family. So this project required that I get in touch with the author's estate because the author had passed away. And they were so excited to release their dad's work because they just love him to pieces, and he was excellent scholar in this area. So it honored their family and it honored his memory, and it was a really lovely tribute to him and his family and his work. So that's very, very, very exciting, and really quite a long path, honestly, with this one to get the rights back. Pearson held them, and it took probably 8-10 months to get rights back for this particular title. And because I am not the copyright holder, I had to rely on the estate to contact the publisher and to get the rights back. And so some of this requires training the author or the estate. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you're looking for. This is how to describe what you're doing. It requires, that author or the family's buy-in upfront. Like, here's our proposal. We know about this book. Our person wants to use it in class. We would like to release it under this license. Are you willing to work with us? This is what's going to be required. So there's quite a lot of coordination. There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of education of families and authors in this work. Okay, Radio Systems Engineering was published by Cambridge University Press in 2016. And I've worked with this author on two other open textbooks. So he told me at one point, I really want to update this, and I'd like to do this under an open license. So of course I was excited. So I went through the Cambridge University permissions website form, filled that out, and heard nothing. And it occurred to me at one point, we had some vendors come in. I work in a library. We spent a lot of money with these vendors, and our vendor rep said, oh, I asked him, I said, I'm having trouble getting in touch with these people. What can we do? He facilitated the whole thing. So he got in touch with the people who could help with getting the rights back. I could ask him and he would follow up on things. So you have more leverage. If you work in a library, you have more leverage than maybe you think you do with vendors you already have relationships with. Use them. So in this case, Cambridge had included the material as part of the Cambridge Core, which is a subscription product. And we made the decision to ask them for just the rights that we needed back. We said, you can keep this in the Cambridge Core. We just want you to say yes. You can keep this in the Cambridge Core in your subscription product, but we want the rights to update this and to publish it again under this license. And so the author and I and Cambridge worked on an addendum to his existing agreement with them. And he had authored this in LaTeX. We still had the files. He did all the layout, which is great. And then we're working on accessibility, resolving accessibility issues with a PDF generated from LaTeX, which is another challenge. So, and then I'll mention also OpenStax. Some of you are probably familiar with this. The author of Organic Chemistry, the 10th edition, which was, I believe, a Cengage title, decided to honor his recently passed son by opening up his version of Organic Chemistry, which is a major selling book. And so OpenStax has published this because he said, I want to do this. This honors my family. And this is a contribution I can make. And so there's now an OpenStax Organic Chemistry book because of this author's generosity and his desire to create a memorial for his son. There are lots more details, but I will say that when we talk about what's valuable to whom, the value is in the eye of the beholder. What is valuable to publishers when they let something go to print, they say, this isn't profitable anymore. We don't care about it. We'll just stop printing it, stop selling it. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable to a reader audience. It doesn't mean it's not valuable to authors or estates. It doesn't mean that it's not valuable for potential future uses. So just because something has gone out of print, that just means that the publisher doesn't see a financial benefit to continuing that title, but there may be other value, from other perspectives. And I will say, authors and estates have been so excited about making these works available again to a reading audience. They put tons of work into this, into all of these publications. They are really want to see their work have a new life, and it's been really exciting to have them come along and enjoy this new life that's breathed into their works. So I want to leave you with a link to the Authors Alliance Rights Reversion Portal. This is how I learned about this process. The Rights Reversion Portal has lots of tools in it that can be helpful for you to understand the process, understand what your letter might need to look like to a publisher. What should you ask for? I don't think the letter has text in it about releasing under an open license, but this is a really great place to go to educate yourself about how rights reversion works. What is it? What are some things you might want to consider? So we have a few minutes, we have about 5 minutes for questions, and I'm going to take a look at the chat, but also welcome those of you who have questions to, okay, so one of the questions online, and thank you, I see a hand also in the in-person audience. One of the questions is, having trouble, a little bit of trouble scrolling. The workflow spreadsheet that you showed, is that available? Yes, I will. Thank you for asking that. I will share that. That is the Excel spreadsheet I have a folder of resources for authors, and I will put that in there, and I'll put the link for this presentation and also for that collection of tools into the chat. So yeah, one person says I no longer offer no derivatives because it's antithetical to OER. Totally agree. And then lots of warm fuzzy stories, yeah. And one person is looking for template letter. I would say look in the Author Alliance rights version portal. That's a really helpful place. And then let's take your question here in person. Yeah.
Hi, so switching from closed to open, do you have the authors write some sort of legal documentation, like switching it over?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
there is some sort of paperwork that you follow.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So there are two things that we need. One is something from the publisher that affirms, yes, this author has the rights back or has, you know, these rights back. And then we have a essentially the equivalent of our author agreement for our other kinds of books to say we authorize me and my team to digitize and release this under this license and display it in public in these places. There is, I will add the link for the folder that has an example of that same agreement also in the sketch. So you can get to it. Yeah.
Hi, I wanted to ask about the process by which you connect with authors who are interested in this. It sounds like many of the authors come to you, but it also sounded like you might approach certain authors. How do you go about that conversation and how do you decide who to approach?
Great. Okay, so what has happened in my situation is professors who are not the authors have come to me saying, I want to use this. I can't get enough copies. And so that triggers me to contact the author or the author's estate. I haven't really gone fishing for these books because they're, you know, you want to have a use that's already built in, prepared, that people are waiting for this kind of content. But it's kind of cold calling. It's sending a really nice email. Hey, we do this kind of work. These are some examples of what we do. This is why it's valuable. And we have a request from this person who really wants to use your amazing book and go through this process. Are you interested? And this is what it would take. So it is a lot of persuasive letter writing, and it takes a while to find the right people to contact. So I worked with the funeral home to find the next of kin for the deceased author, and that was actually.
Thank you, Anita. This is really great. I am wondering about, I have this situation where I have a couple of faculty who just love texts that are out of print. But I work at a tiny college of only 800 students, so I don't have the capacity to support this. And we don't really have a built-in audience to the same degree that you would at Virginia Tech. So what do you think? I'm wondering about suggesting my faculty get in touch with their peers at other bigger schools to see if they might, does that seem like a strategy that might work?
I think building a consortium of potential users, people know what's good in their field and what they're missing. So building a consortium of users and then connecting with, like, I would be very interested in that kind of shared approach where somebody does the legwork to build a user community and somebody does the work to negotiate rights and raise awareness among with the author of the estate. I think that's a great idea. You know, resources are limited, right? For all of us, we have different needs as well. So.
Thank you, Anita. We're actually at time and we just need to be cognizant there's another session starting in 5 minutes. So thank you all. Please connect with Anita if you have additional questions.